Yu-Gi-Oh! First Series, Episode 001. Published by Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki, Fandom. Violent Battle, A Game of Darkness, is the first episode of the Toei Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. It first aired in Japan on April 4, 1998. Yugi Muto is a student, who is bullied by his classmate Katsuya Janochi. The hall monitor Yugioh forcibly becomes Yugi's bodyguard, beats up Janochi and Hiroto Honda and then says that Yugi owes him money. Yugioh later beats up Yugi but Janochi and Honda help him and are beaten up too. Yugi solves the Millennium Puzzle and the Games of Darkness begin. A group of archaeologists enter an Egyptian tomb. One man referred to as Professor approaches a gold box, saying that if he becomes numb and faints, it is a sign of a game of darkness. The professor begins to suffer pains and falls to his knees. As the others rush to his aid, he tells them it is the puzzle of darkness. The scene cuts to Domino High School, where it is lunchtime. The boys decide to play basketball and let the girls play too. Someone calls Yugi, causing him to lose concentration and let his card tower collapse. He tells Yugi to come play rather than play games by himself. Yugi declines saying, "Yeah, but what if the team I join loses?" Yugi tidies up his cards wishing there was a game he could play with everyone else. He then cheers up reaching for something in his bag, saying that today he will solve it. He then pulls out the box from the Egyptian tomb. Yugi begins to talk about the secret puzzle inside the box. It's something that you see, but have never seen before. He begins to open the box saying, the answer is, but Janochi suddenly swipes the box from Yugi. Janochi asks Yugi what he's looking at and talking about by himself. Yugi asks him for the box back, but Janochi hurls it across the room and runs over to catch it. He tells Yugi that he's going to teach him to be a man. Holding up the puzzle, Janochi says, "You want this box back, right? Then gimme all you got." Yugi protests shouting, "I hate fighting and violence." Hiroto Honda appears telling Janochi to hold it. Janochi mocks Honda saying that as president of first-year students Honda wants to fulfill his duty as soldier of comfort and become the janitor. Honda protests, "Not a janitor, an honor student." Honda begins to talk about his authority. Janochi ignores him by asking Yugi what's inside the box, while Honda speaks. Yugi tells Janochi that it's okay to look, if he doesn't tell anyone, because it's really valuable. Honda, who had still been talking to this point, tells them to listen to someone when they are talking. Janochi peeks inside the box and pulls a dull face, saying that it's dumb. Anzu Mizaki then appears swiping the box from Janochi, telling him to give it back if he thinks it's dumb and that bullying those weaker than you makes you look dumb. Janochi objects that he's not bullying the weak, he's teaching Yugi to act like a man. Anzu tells him to be quiet, just as Miho Nosaka appears. Miho tells them that the cafeteria line is long and she has had nothing for lunch. Honda immediately volunteers to get her lunch. Janochi says he'll go with him, so he could escape from Anzu. Janochi tells Honda about how Anzu pisses him off. As he says, "Who's bullying the weak?" both of them bump into Yugioh, who asks them what they were saying about bullying. Janochi says, "Nothing at all," and begins to say something else, but Honda quickly restrains him and forces a smile saying, "Nothing at all, really." Yugioh announces that bullying is not good. Honda quickly agrees. After Yugioh leaves, Honda tells "Let's go" of Janochi, who starts to rant about that hurting. Honda calls him an idiot and tells him that was Yugioh. He enforces all the regulations and is very powerful. Janochi is unconvinced and remains bitter to Yugioh. Back in the classroom, Yugi thanks Anzu, who informs him that they get worse if you keep quiet and insists that Yugi should stick up for himself once in a while. Yugi replies that Janochi isn't so bad. Anzu reminds him that saying things like that is why people make fun of him. Yugi starts to look slightly depressed, so Anzu changes the subject by asking him about the box. Yugi gets excited and offers to show her, if she promises to keep it a secret. Anzu is impressed by the sparkling gold pieces. Yugi says that it's a puzzle. He's never finished it, so he doesn't know what it looks like. Something you see, but haven't seen before. Yugi explains that his family owns a game shop. He found the puzzle in a corner of the shop hidden under dust. It's supposed to be a strange puzzle discovered in the ruins of Egypt. He shows her something written on the front of the box. According to his interpretation, it says, "Whoever solves the puzzle, can ask me to fulfill one wish." He laughs, saying that he might have been a bit overdramatic. His head drops in shame and he asks Anzu if she's making fun of him. Anzu laughs friendly, saying that's not true, and asks Yugi what his wish is. Yugi winks. That is too secret to tell. Back in the corridor, Janochi slips his hand into his pocket and reveals a piece of Yugi's puzzle he managed to swipe from the box earlier. He grasps the piece and grins, saying how Yugi won't be able to solve it if he's missing a piece. Honda tells Janochi that he is truly helpless. He should try to give wings to his heart's beauty, meaning lighten up. Janochi reminds Honda that he's supposed to be buying lunch. Honda quickly rushes off and Janochi throws the piece out the window into a canal. He thinks to himself, Yugi is such a child, that's what makes Janochi sick. Later, Yugioh is training the disciplinary group. While Yugi walks past, Yugioh calls to him. He asks him if he's being bullied by people in his class. Yugi replies that he doesn't think so. Yugioh tells him that just because he's a nice person he doesn't have to answer like that. Yugioh then anoints himself Yugi's bodyguard, saying Yugi does not need to worry. Yugi insists that that isn't necessary as he leaves. Yugi meets Anzu when he arrives home. His grandfather, Sugoroku, says that Anzu has told him Yugi hasn't given up on the puzzle. He informs Yugi that the puzzle is for an intellectual person, impossible for Yugi to solve, and that the team of archaeologists which took it from a pharaoh's tomb entirely died of mysterious deaths. The last said with his dying breath, "The games of darkness. Whoever solves the puzzle will get knowledge of the games of darkness." Anzu gets worried, but Yugi gets interested. He intends to solve the puzzle no matter what now. Sugoroku makes an attempt to grab the puzzle, saying he has a buyer for it. At night, Yugi works hard on the puzzle in his room. Sugoroku looks through the keyhole at Yugi. He has faith in Yugi, but is concerned about the consequences of solving the puzzle. Regardless, he decides that he'll let Yugi finish it. At school, Yugioh greets Yugi, wanting to show him something. He leads Yugi to Janochi and Honda, where they lie beaten up. Yugi tells Yugioh that this is too much and asks Janochi and Honda if they are okay. Janochi grunts and asks Yugi if he's satisfied. Yugi explains that it's not true, he didn't ask Yugioh to do this. Yugioh continues to attack Janochi, but Yugi protests, he won't let Yugioh do this to his friends. Yugioh jokes about Yugi calling them his friends and imposes a bodyguard fee of 200,000 yen. That night, while Yugi was trying to work out what was to be about Yugioh and his fee, he couldn't help but work on his puzzle. Unlike other days, solving the puzzle seemed a lot easier that day. Yugi quickly began assembling the puzzle until there was one piece left. He is shocked to find that the last piece is missing. While Janochi and Honda are walking home, they talk about Yugioh. Janochi looks into the canal where he threw the piece of the puzzle and remembers Yugi sticking up for them and calling them his friends. He jumps into the canal to retrieve it. Meanwhile, Yugi dashes to school, hoping he can find the missing piece of the puzzle there. He meets Yugioh, who asks if he has the bodyguard fees. Yugi says that he's just come to the school to get something he forgot. When Yugioh realizes Yugi can't give him money, he thinks he should punish him. Back at the canal, Janochi recovers the piece. Honda throws him a towel and notices Yugioh leading Yugi somewhere. They run up to Yugioh, who is after attacking Yugi, and Yugi gets knocked unconscious. Janochi gives Yugi the piece while Honda tells Yugioh that until today he had respected him, but he wouldn't get away with this. Janochi and Honda attack Yugioh but get beaten up again. Yugioh announces that this is what becomes of those who oppose him. Yugi gains consciousness and sees the two fall. He then realizes he has the missing piece and reaches to the puzzle, inserting it. The puzzle glows and a large shadow appears behind Yugi. The eye of Anubis flashes on the shadow. Yugi with a more confident voice calls Yugioh to play a game. Yugioh is suddenly suspended by rope from a dome. He looks up and sees Yugi at the other end of the rope. Yugi tells Yugioh that he has the money, but just handing it over is boring, and suggests that he and Yugioh play a game for it, a game of darkness. Yugioh agrees, saying that he has never lost a game. Yugi jumps down so that the rope hangs freely from a pole at the top of the dome, leaving both players suspended from the rope at equal height. As he jumps, he spreads a deck of cards face down along the dome. He explains the rules. They both take turns picking up cards. A player can only climb up the number indicated on the card, while the other player lowers the same amount. First to the top gets the money. Yugioh goes first, turning over the 10 of diamonds. Yugi turns over the king of diamonds, allowing him to climb 13 spaces. Yugioh turns over the 2 of spades. Yugi turns over the queen, 12 of spades. Yugioh, the 3 of diamonds. Yugi the 9 of hearts. Yugioh the 6 of clubs. Yugi, the jack, 11 of spades. Yugi is one step from the top. Yugioh says that he can turn the game around if he draws the next card. Yugioh then draws a joker. Yugi explains that joker is the end of the line. As Yugi begins his turn, Yugioh says that Yugi must have planned this from the start. Yugi turns the ace of diamonds. Yugioh gets furious and climbs up to Yugi. Yugi informs him that breaking the rules results in very bad consequences. He attempts to punch Yugi and breaks the rope attaching them. Yugi falls from the dome. Yugioh proceeds to take the money, but finds it's only a deck of cards. The eye of Anubis lights up on Yugi, who is hanging from the building. Yugi punishes Yugioh for cheating. Yugioh falls from the building, and Yugi creates the illusion that there are monsters in the water Yugioh is falling into. The next day, a group of people find Yugioh curled up scared. Word spreads that he suffered a massive shock. Yugi, who has no recollection of the game with Yugioh, is greeted by Janochi. Janochi says that he also has a treasure and asks Yugi if he wants to see it. Yugi nods, but Janochi says that his treasure too is something you can show, but can't see. Yugi wonders and Janochi tells him that the answer is friendship. Janochi dashes off to class, thinking, how could he say such corny stuff? Yugi runs after him, calling him back, saying he forgot his shoe. In the manga, the boys invited the girls to play basketball, in the hopes of seeing under their skirts as they took shots. The motive is not mentioned in the anime. Honda is not Janochi's crony, but a rejected candidate for class president and junior custodian. He is not entirely in favor of how Janochi treats Yugi and even tells him off at times. Miho Nosaka becomes a main character in this series. In this episode, Janochi and Honda use buying her lunch as an excuse to leave after Anzu appears. Janochi returns the piece of the puzzle to Yugi after Yugi gets beaten up by Yugioh, rather than give it to his grandpa to pass on. The shadow game with Yugioh was completely changed. The manga version, Money and Knife, involved players trying to control their greed by using a knife to pick up banknotes from their hands. Yu-Gi-Oh! First Series, Episode 002. Published by Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki, Fandom. The Evil Gamer, The Trap of Hell, is the second episode of the Toei Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. It first aired in Japan on April 11, 1998. It is based on Duel 4 of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga. A convict believed to be Tetsu Tasaki escapes from prison, leaving the city in a panic. Yugi Muto and his friends notice Anzu Mizaki has been behaving strange lately. Investigation causes them to get involved with the police search for the convict. Sugoroku is impressed that Yugi has solved the Millennium Puzzle. He tells Yugi that since it was discovered this century, no one had been able to solve it. Sugoroku places his hand on Yugi's forehead and asks him if he suddenly feels smarter or stronger. Yugi replies, "No, why?" Sugoroku reminds him that the glyphs on the puzzle's box say, "Thou who completes me will receive my dark knowledge and power." Yugi excitedly says that's right, his wish came true, and that he had made friends. Sugoroku ponders, thinking that can't be the dark knowledge and power. At Domino City Jail, an escape is reported. The escapee, Jiro the Jorogumo, escapes while disguised as Tetsu Tasaki by attacking a guard. He slips past the police, now disguised in one of the uniforms. He makes his escape in a squad car, where he listens to the police reports, which are stating Tetsu Tasaki, also known as Tetsu the Hedgehog, is the one who escaped. After class ends, Janochi calls Yugi over and asks where they should go on the way home. Yugi suggests Burger World, since he has good reports of the place. Honda appears before the two boys and reminds them that stopping on the way home is against school rules. Miho Nosaka rushes over saying that she'd like to go to Burger World. Hearing Miho, Honda quickly changes his mind. Anzu tries to discourage them, saying that the place is terrible, people started getting sick the day it opened and they absolutely cannot go there. She then reminds them what the teacher said about an escaped convict on the loose, so they should probably go straight home. Miho gets anxious, and tells Janochi that they say the convict has a gun. Anzu slips out of the room, letting out a sigh of relief. Janochi and Yugi remark that Anzu has been acting strange lately, noting that she hasn't walked home with them recently. Janochi wonders if she is going on Enjo Kosai. Miho starts to worry about Anzu and decides to follow her home. The real Tetsu Tasaki cracks open a safe at Ushijima Finance. He is surprised to find it already empty. Later at a restaurant, Tasaki hears on Morning Asa that a number of banks have been robbed, with the robber making off with 30 million yen and that dental work has indicated it to be the recently escaped Tetsu Tasaki. Janochi talks about a game that's so difficult, he hasn't even been able to complete the first level. He tells the others they should try it. Miho and Anzu make a vague excuse and leave. Janochi comments that Miho has become Anzu's fellow date for hire. Honda scolds Janochi and Yugi reproach Janochi. Janochi calls them naive and points out that Anzu could afford an expensive lunch earlier, so she must be making money. Honda is shocked and wonders if it's possible Miho could be doing such a thing. He follows the girls, hoping to save Miho. Tasaki steals a necklace he believes was once worn by Marie Antoinette. While driving he hears on the car radio that the stolen necklace was an imitation. There were also 30 jewels missing, and the suspect is again Tetsu Tasaki. Janochi invites Honda to come play basketball. Honda says he's busy and leaves with the girls. Yugi asks Janochi if he's going to say Honda is also going on Enjo Kosai. Janochi considers that Honda might be seeing a rich lady. They follow Honda and the girls' trail to Burger World. As they enter Anzu, Miho and Honda, in Burger World uniforms, meet them at the door and begin to welcome them. Janochi reminds Honda that having a part-time job is against school rules and Honda's the one who always insists on the rules. Honda says that he needed the job. Another worker at the restaurant calls over to them, telling them to bring the customers to their seats. As Janochi and Yugi wait at their seats, Yugi is concerned that coming here has embarrassed the others. Janochi says that it serves them right for keeping this a secret. Meanwhile, Jiro approaches the restaurant with a detective believing him to be Tetsu Tasaki searching for him. Anzu serves the boys their burgers. After placing the tray in front of them, she squirts ketchup onto the burgers, writing, "I won't forgive you if you blab." She tells them she's saving money so that she can study dance in New York after she graduates. They assure her they won't laugh or tell. Janochi grumbles about having to pay for burgers drowned in ketchup, but Anzu says that they're on her. The detective enters the restaurant and informs the staff that the escaped convict might be in this restaurant. Yugi and Janochi come over to see what's happening. The detective shows them a picture of Tetsu Tasaki, but also points out that the convict is a master of disguise and it's rare to see him out of disguise. The detective tells them that after stealing the jewels, the convict struggled with a guard, so he may have a mark on his right calf. Anzu directs their attention to a basket of toy cars, saying they can use them. They drop the basket, pretending it to be an accident, causing the cars to go all over the restaurant, under many tables. Anzu, Janochi and Honda go to gather up the cars, checking the customers' legs as they search under the tables. The detective then tells the gang that the culprit has an allergic reaction to eggs. Anzu points out that they should be able to find him with no problem, since the hamburger buns all have egg in them. One of the customers overhears and begins to worry. The detective grabs and unmasks him, saying that he is under arrest. Anzu admits to lying about the egg. The criminal, Tetsu Tasaki, tackles the detective, knocking over a staff member. He notices a bruise on his calf and realizes this must be the man who was beating him to the crimes. He tears the back of the staff's uniform, revealing a large spider tattoo, exposing him as Jiro the Jorogumo. Jiro gets to his feet and grabs Tasaki's gun. He takes Anzu hostage, holding the gun to her head. Jiro explains that he had seen Tetsu Tasaki here before. He could recognize him even with his disguise and tell what places he was about to rob. He had committed the 2 robberies before Tetsu. Jiro tells everyone to get down. He blindfolds Anzu and sits the 2 of them down, keeping her at gunpoint. He orders Yugi to get him a drink and a smoke. Anzu tells him to stay back, but gets slapped for doing so. Upset by having one of his friends attacked, Yami Yugi comes out. Yugi brings the drink and cigarettes, plops himself into the seat across from Jiro, and says that he wants to play a game. Anzu is surprised, realizing the voice is too confident to be Yugi. Jiro accepts the challenge. Yugi explains that each player can only use one finger. Jiro chooses his trigger finger. Yugi picks his right thumb. Jiro starts to pour out his drink. Yugi explains that after the game starts, you can do whatever you like, even pull the trigger. Jiro laughs and prepares to pull the trigger, but Yugi lights the cigarette lighter, reminding Jiro his cigarette has yet to be lit. After lighting the cigarette, Yugi places the lighter on Jiro's hand, which is still pouring the alcohol. Jiro sees that if he moves the lighter will fall, setting him alight. Yugi gets up and takes Anzu with him. Jiro takes the lighter off his hand, grabs his gun, and points it at Yugi. But for breaking the rules, Yugi inflicts a penalty game, making Jiro think he is on fire. Anzu quits working at Burger World, explaining to Yugi that if she kept working she wouldn't have any time to spend with him. She wonders who the man who saved her was. Janochi calls the 2 of them over. A new beef bowl restaurant is opening today. As they enter the building they are greeted by Honda and Miho in the restaurant's uniforms. Miho explains that she needs new clothes and Honda vows that he'll fall as far as needed, as long as he gets to be with Miho. Honda and Miho were not present in this storyline in the manga. Janochi and Yugi followed Anzu home the first day. The escaped prisoner was unnamed. He was referred to as prisoner number 777 and had 777 branded on his forehead. Tetsu Tasaki did not appear in this story either, and Jiro was not shown to have committed any of the crimes Tetsu was blamed for in the anime, apart from escaping the prison. Jiro was not disguised as anyone. The main reason he went to the restaurant was to get a drink and cigarettes. He took Anzu hostage at the door. Rather than cheat in the game of darkness, Jiro accidentally let his cigarette fall, setting himself alight. The last scene with Janochi, Anzu and Yugi going to the beef bowl did not occur. Yu-Gi-Oh! First Series, Episode 003. Published by Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki, Fandom. First theft. 2 suited men corner a boy on top of a building demanding a card off him. The boy refuses, saying it is a memento of his father. They start to assault him, causing him to throw the card, Black Magician, into Seto Kaiba's hand. One of the men turns to Kaiba informing him, they have now acquired all the cards he wanted from this school. As they leave, one of the men tells Kaiba that there are other schools where the cards are popular. Domino High. At school, Yugi Muto shows his friends his Duel Monsters cards, telling them that the game became popular when he was in 3rd grade and it is now becoming popular in other schools. Katsuya Janochi pauses and asks, "How do you play?" Yugi says that it's a card battle game and begins to explain the rules. Anzu Mizaki agrees that it sounds fun, but Janochi claims to not like these kinds of childish games. Hiroto Honda appears, wearing a sash reading, Strong Beautification Week, and asserts that Janochi does not mean childish game, but rather game that involves using your head. Janochi goes over to him and asks what that was supposed to mean. Honda claims it to be as Janochi heard and that there were no hidden meanings. Janochi calls Honda a bastard, as he fills with rage. Anzu interrupts to ask Honda about the sash. Honda explains that since those cards are so popular, they are becoming a collector's item and that there will be people who will try to obtain them through unjust means. Anzu is slightly doubtful that people would go to those lengths for these cards. Yugi disagrees, informing her that people have come here from America to buy a single card and that his grandpa is even a maniac for the cards. Something clicks with Honda. He announces that, as part of Strong Beautification Week, he will prevent illegal cards. Janochi interrupts, pointing out that that's not really a beautification person's job. Honda smiles and says that a beautification member doesn't just clean the dirty, that is just the first step. He stands proudly, saying that few are destined for this, then reconsiders and says no, that he is the only one. He bows and alleges that he set up Strong Beautification Week to fight that. He continues his speech, but is cut off by the homeroom teacher, asking if he can interrupt. Honda looks around and notices everyone has taken their seats and class is about to begin. The teacher then introduces a new transfer student. Yugi wonders who it could be and hopes that the new student likes games. The new student enters and the teacher introduces him as Seto Kaiba. The other classmates mutter to each other that Kaiba is the heir to the top-class amusement industry, Kaiba Corporation. Anzu is impressed, but Janochi says that he can't stand spoiled, rich kids. The two become friends and after school, Kaiba invites Yugi to come to his mansion so he could show Yugi his card collection. Miho exclaims that she wants to come too and they all decide to go, figuring Kaiba will be pleased. Kaiba's mansion. Yugi, Anzu, and Janochi wait outside the mansion as Honda and Miho arrive. Janochi is still uneasy about Kaiba, saying that there should be a law against someone having such a large house. Kaiba shows them inside and is delighted that all 5 of them showed up. While the others are amazed by the interior of his house, Janochi still remains unsatisfied and Honda infers that he is jealous. Angry at his assumption, Janochi grabs Honda by the collar, but Anzu breaks the two up and asks them to at least act properly here. However, Kaiba says he doesn't mind, it's more fun if things are lively. Janochi mutters that he dislikes Kaiba even more, but Honda says he likes Kaiba, who he considers to be rich, but not snobby. Kaiba takes the group to a room containing his card collection. Inside, the walls are lined with Duel Monsters cards, and shelves are filled with trophies. To everyone's surprise, Kaiba says that one is from when he won the Duel Monsters national tournament. Honda tells Janochi to give it up. Kaiba is way above him. Miho looks at Kaiba in admiration and asks him about his theme parks. Honda tries to stop anything happening between the two, telling Miho that he has tickets, but Kaiba offers to make a reservation for all of them at a theme park. Miho then hugs Kaiba, saying he is the best. This enrages Honda, who now thinks he can't stand Kaiba. Kaiba asks if Yugi has any rare cards. Yugi replies that he doesn't have any, but Anzu asks if he had, saying earlier that his grandpa had an amazing card. Kaiba says that he would definitely like to see it. Wanting to show Kaiba up, Honda and Janochi urge Yugi to show it to Kaiba right away. Kaiba thanks Yugi and says that he looks forward to seeing it. Kame Game. At Kame Game, Anzu, Honda, Janochi, Yugi, Kaiba and Miho gather around the counter, as they ask Yugi's grandpa, Sugoroku, if they can see his card. Sugoroku agrees to show it to them, roots around a bit and produces a Blue Eyes Dragon card. Kaiba is astonished, but Miho is disappointed, having expected it to have diamonds or jewels attached. Janochi remarks that it's no different than the other cards. Sugoroku sighs that they don't get it. The card is so powerful that its production was cancelled, and obsessive fans would drool over it. Seeing it that way, Anzu thinks the card is more appealing. Honda leans over the counter and states that as a beatification member, he must warn Sugoroku that the card is dangerous and requests that he turn it over for safekeeping. However, Sugoroku asks why a beatification member would care. Kaiba places his briefcase full of cards on the counter and pleads with Sugoroku to trade Blue Eyes Dragon for all of them. Yugi, Janochi and Honda are shocked by this, but even more shocked when Sugoroku declines the offer. Sugoroku explains that there is no way he would get rid of the card. He is not keeping it because it is rare, but because it was given to him by a dear friend from America. He looks back at a picture of himself and another man as he explains this. He describes the card as a treasure filled with memory. He says that truly precious treasures have your heart in them, and for that reason Kaiba should also cherish every card in his briefcase. Kaiba admits that Sugoroku is right, he had made a mistake and closes his briefcase. He then leaves to go home. Janochi compliments Sugoroku on saying something great and Miho hugs him, stating that she now sees him in a new light. On his way home, Kaiba still thinks about the Blue Eyes Dragon. Domino High. At school, Janochi and Honda are now playing Duel Monsters, while Yugi explains the rules. Honda proceeds to summon Zombie, which has 800 ATK, and places it in the graveyard terrain. Janochi goes next and summons Dark Dragon, which has 1500 ATK. He begins to celebrate winning, while Honda hangs his head. However, Yugi corrects them, pointing out that Honda is the winner. He explains that while the ATK and def of Zombie are indeed weaker than those of Dark Dragon, while Zombie is the graveyard terrain, its power is doubled. Janochi drops his cards on the table in frustration and Honda claims that his cards have the beautification's heart within them. Janochi claims that a beautification like Honda in a zombie would be pretty dirty, but Honda laughs that Janochi is just being a sore loser. Miho and Anzu enter the room and greet the others. Miho notes that Janochi and Honda have taken up duel monsters and Anzu explains that it's because they want to challenge Kaiba. Janochi and Honda then point at each other and accuse that of being the other's agenda. As they are about to start arguing, Kaiba enters. Kaiba greets Yugi and reminds him of their phone discussion last night. Yugi roots in his bag and takes out the Blue Eyes Dragon card, saying his grandpa let him borrow it for the day. Kaiba thanks Yugi and tells him that he wanted to see the card again so badly after Sugoroku taught him how to love the cards. Yugi hands Kaiba the card and Kaiba acts delighted, while he secretly plans on switching the card with a counterfeit in his pocket. Kaiba drops the card, pretending it was an accident, but gives Yugi the fake after picking it up. However, Janochi and Honda both spot the exchange, while Yugi seems oblivious to it. On the way home, Yugi looks at the card with the feeling that something isn't right. Anzu catches up to him and asks why he isn't with Janochi and Honda and informs him that they said they were going to play Kaiba in Duel Monsters, so she thought that they would be with him. Yugi is surprised to hear this. On the roof of the school, Kaiba meets Janochi and Honda and asks why they asked to meet him here. They tell him not to play dumb, they know he switched cards earlier. Kaiba laughs that there is no way he would do that, since it's stealing. Honda claims that his beautification eyes don't miss a speck of dust, so Kaiba can't fool him. Janochi seizes Kaiba by the jacket and says that he couldn't stand him from the beginning. Janochi raises a fist, but Kaiba tells him that he'll regret it. A suited man grabs Janochi's arm and punches him away. Honda rushes over to Janochi and swears at Kaiba. Another suited man appears and Kaiba explains that their job is to protect him, the next president. Yugi runs to the roof worried about his friends, and finds Janochi and Honda on the floor unconscious, the suited men having their feet on their backs. Kaiba told him to not believe their lies. Yugi tells him he already know he switched the card and left with it, but he figured that later he will return it back to him since he said he also loves games. Kaiba smiles while Yugi asks him to return it. It's his grandpa's most precious treasure, and Kaiba can get one for himself. Yugi approaches and begs him to return it since it's like his grandpa's heart, but Kaiba gets angry and knocks him with the briefcase while he advised to not touch him again. Yugi falls on the floor. Kaiba explains that cards don't have any heart. Cards are only cards and all that stuff about the heart is something that stupid people like him believe in hoping that others did the same. Kaiba tells him to explain to his grandpa that a game is not about heart, and that he has to understand that in order to win. Kaiba leaves, saying that he never thought he would hear such nonsense at this school. Yugi tries to stop him, but one of the suited men grabs him from the back of his jacket, and says to Kaiba that they will take care of him before knocking Yugi unconscious. At that moment, Yami Yugi comes out and stands up, telling the two suited men that they are useless, and orders to get out of his way while smiling at them. Before Kaiba leaves the school, Yugi calls him to play a game, and surprises Kaiba with his new appearance. Meanwhile, Janochi and Honda wake up and find the two suited men unconscious. Time to duel. Yugi and Kaiba are about to play Duel Monsters. Kaiba reminds Yugi he is an expert on Duel Monsters and asks him if he can handle that. Yugi answers is that they will find that out and warns him that this Duel Monsters will be different from the others. Kaiba doesn't seem to worry about it. Yugi explains the rules. They both have a deck with 40 cards and they draw a card each turn. First to reach 0 loses. After the duel ends, Yugi is left alone with a ruined table, figuring that Kaiba didn't call himself a Duel Monsters expert for nothing. He then picks up the Blue Eyes Dragon card from the floor and returns it to his grandfather. Kaiba's mansion. Kaiba, furious about the duel ending in a draw, destroys the shelves with cards and trophies. He declares that he won't forget this and that he will fight against Yugi until he defeats him. Katsuya Janochi vs Hiroto Honda. Honda's turn. Janochi's turn. Janochi summons Dark Dragon and uses it to attack Zombie. Since Zombie is in the graveyard field, its attack is doubled. Zombie 800 1600 ATK. Dark Dragon is destroyed. Honda wins. Dark Yugi vs Seto Kaiba. Kaiba's turn. Dark Yugi's turn. Dark Yugi summons Dark Dragon in the lake. Dark Dragon attacks and destroys Gargoyle Kaiba. 2,500 life points. Kaiba's turn. Kaiba summons Minotaurus in the desert. Minotaurus attacks and destroys Dark Dragon, Dark Yugi, 2,500 life points. Dark Yugi's turn. Kaiba's turn. Kaiba switches Minotaurus to defense position and sets one card. Dark Yugi's turn. Kaiba's turn. Kaiba activates his face down, growth, to increase the ATK of Minotaurus ATK. Minotaurus 1700-2200 ATK. Minotaurus attacks and destroys Holy Elf. Dark Yugi's turn. Dark Yugi summons Summon Demon in the Dark Forest. Summon Demon attacks and destroys Minotaurus Kaiba. 1500-1200 life points. Kaiba's turn. Kaiba puts Blue Eyes Dragon onto the top of his deck without Dark Yugi noticing and draws it. He summons it in the lake, but it is destroyed because of its will to fight clashing with its loyalty to Yugi's grandpa. Dark Yugi's life points decrease to 50. Dark Yugi's turn. Dark Yugi activates Revive the Dead to revive Blue Eyes White Dragon. Kaiba's life points decrease to 100. Kaiba's turn. Kaiba draws and summons Gremlin to split the field in two, which ends the duel in a draw. This storyline happens earlier in the anime than in the manga. In the manga, Kaiba lost his duel against Yugi Muto and received the Experience of Death penalty game. Yu-Gi-Oh! First Series, Episode 004. Published by Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki, Fandom. Hiroto Honda waits in line to get a rare watch for Miho Nosaka. Later on at an arcade, the watch is stolen by Shitaro Akaboshi. Yugi Muto's effort to get it back leads him to the arcade's basement where a game of darkness begins. In the next scene, the sun rises and Hiroto Honda is waiting for Miho Nosaka somewhere in the city. He asks himself what she might want with him at this time of the day and wonders if it is love, but his thoughts are interrupted by a piece of paper on the ground, intolerable for a head of the cleanup committee. Miho arrives some moments later and states her request. At the same time, Yugi Muto leaves the game shop. Sugoroku Muto, after bidding him farewell, mentions he is very happy that Yugi is not just playing games all alone but has started meeting with his school friends. Strolling through the city, Yugi sees a long queue of people in front of a shop. The man last in line tells him it's the D-Shock Premium Collection they are waiting for, and that this mythical Premium Collection watch is on limited sale just this day. Yugi then notices Honda is also part of the queue, to get a D-Shock for Miho Nosaka, of course. Being in quite a pinch because he needs to go to the bathroom, but also wanting to fulfill Miho's wish under all circumstances, Honda begs Yugi to take his place for a moment. After some waiting, it's Yugi's turn. The shopkeeper tells him he is really lucky, because he is holding the last piece of the D-Shock Premium Collection. Hearing this, the people behind Yugi get a little upset while Shitaro, who is among them, gets really frustrated. Yugi pays, but the moment he wants to take the box with the watch, Shitaro appears telling him he doesn't deserve this item. To stress this, he displays the Swiss color watches in special variation. He is wearing 5 on each arm, claiming that there are only about 100 of each of the 10 types worldwide, and that no one has collected all 10. Explaining that the D-Shock has only meaning in the hands of a rare watch collector like himself, he collars Yugi but is stopped by the reappearing Honda, who reminds him that he also has to obey the rules. The shopkeeper starts calling the police and Shitaro flees from the scene. Next, Miho is seen standing in front of an arcade, surrounded by Katsuya Janochi, Anzu Mizaki, Yugi and Honda, wearing her new D-Shock. She tells Honda she loves him, which Janochi quotes with a silly grin. Honda gets embarrassed and starts a speech about this whole waiting being a totally normal duty for a beautification member. Janochi isn't listening to his lecture and asks Miho if he can wear the D-Shock just once, which results in Honda challenging him to a game of Janken to decide who of them will have the honor of wearing it. Their quarrel is observed by Shitaro, who has not given up and is waiting just around the corner. Inside the arcade, Honda, who apparently won the rock-paper-scissors match, is caressing the D-whatever of his beloved Miho while Yugi wins a ton of coins from a slot machine, and the rare watch collector, Shitaro Akaboshi, is bumped into by another arcade visitor. The watches don't take any damage, but nonetheless the incident results in the visitor being beaten up in the toilet. Honda then enters the room to refresh himself and puts the D-Shock in the back pocket of his pants to keep it from getting wet. From there it is stolen right away by Shitaro on his way out while Honda washes his face. When Miho wants to leave the arcade because of her early curfew, Honda is unable to return the D-Shock to her. After searching his whole body for it, and getting almost naked in the process, Miho slaps him and runs out crying, calling him an idiot and screaming she hates him. Yugi notices that Shitaro is standing nearby and thinks that he might have stolen it. While Honda, dressed again, is on all fours on the floor doing some more searching, Shitaro steps on his hand on purpose. Janochi seizes him, asking what his problem is, but Honda doesn't care and says Janochi should help him look for the watch instead of playing with that idiot. Shitaro then leaves for the basement, followed by Yugi, who decides to check for proofs of him being the thief. The proof is given as Shitaro of his own accord shows the watch to Yugi on the way down. After reaching an air conditioning room, Yugi and Shitaro are fighting over the D-Shock. Having beaten Yugi up quite badly, Shitaro wants to leave, but behind his back the Millennium Puzzle reacts and the door does not open. Dark Yugi appears, and it's game time. In the game of darkness, the D-Shock is on the line. The room suddenly fills with dozens of gears, a pendulum swings from side to side and the watch is snatched from Shitaro by a mechanical bird emerging from the floor. Dark Yugi explains the rules. the D-shock will reappear from the ground and the stopwatch will activate. The one who stops it closest to 10 seconds wins. But if you exceed the 10 seconds you will get hit by the pendulum passing by right next to the D-shock. Shotaro accepts the rules and decides to start. He stops the watch at 9.35 seconds. On his turn, Yugi concentrates with eyes closed and stops the watch at 9.95 seconds. Shotaro complains that this was just a test and that they will do it again, but this time he wants to switch places with Yugi. Yugi agrees and Shotaro starts again. While waiting he thinks the side he is now on has an advantage, because it is easier to reach the switch on the D-shock. But when trying to stop the watch he recognizes the pendulum is coming from the other side now and he will be in its way, and while hesitating his left hand gets hit by the pendulum. Yugi reaches out to take back the D-shock, but even after losing twice Shotaro refuses to hand it over. Anyhow, that doesn't matter because the door of darkness has been opened already and Shotaro begins turning into the object of his obsession. When Yugi leaves him screaming in the air conditioning room, the Swiss watches seem to have merged with his arms and even his eyes look like faces. In the aftermath of the game of darkness, Shotaro, immediately on returning home, destroys his whole watch collection with a baseball bat. The next day Miho tells the gang at school that on Sunday the Emperor department store Mambo Lady line perfume is specially on sale and Miho wants this. No one is surprised that Honda will wait in queue again in her stead. His brave decision provokes Janochi's final comment of this episode. I don't suppose they make medicine for stupidity. Yu-Gi-Oh! First Series, Episode 005. Published by Yu-Gi-Oh! Wikia, Fandom. A plane takes landing into an airport. A man in a white robe walks through the airport carrying the Millennium Scale and the Millennium Key. Yugi and the gang are reading a newspaper. One of the highlights is an excavation to Egypt. Yugi says they found the king's grave at Egypt and it will be displayed at the museum the next day. Miho thinks it's exciting and she wants to go. Yugi says the professor who found the grave is friend of Grandpa, he'll show them the excavations. Anzu points to a picture of the professor in the newspaper. She then says Yugi's puzzle was also found in Egypt, he agrees. Anzu says the people who found the puzzle all died mysteriously. Janochi wonders if Yugi is cursed, but Yugi doesn't think so. Yugi tells himself he does sometimes have memory loss after completing the puzzle, but he decides to keep that a secret. Honda points to a mummy in the newspaper. Janochi freaks out over it, but tries to hide it. Honda wonders if Janochi's scared of mummies and Janochi exclaims no way. Honda gets a crazy thought. He pictures Miho running from a mummy and into his arms. Honda gets excited, and he also wants to go to the museum. Anzu says they will meet at the museum tomorrow at 1 o'clock. The next day, everyone waits at the museum's front doors. The professor walks up to Grandpa and greets him. Grandpa is pleased that the professor is willing to show them the exhibit. He then introduces Yugi and the gang to Professor Yoshimori. Another man then walks up to them. Yoshimori says he's the sponsor for the display and he was also in charge of the excavation. The man introduces himself as Kanekura and welcomes them to his museum. Suddenly, the same man in the white robe makes a slight appearance from behind the bushes. Yugi notices someone there, but he's not too sure. Kanekura asks Yoshimori about the item, and Yoshimori asks Grandpa about his grandson who solved the Millennium Puzzle. Kanekura immediately sees Yugi's Millennium Puzzle and holds it in his hands. Yoshimori tells Yugi Kanekura is a special dealer interested in ancient artifacts. Yugi grabs the Millennium Puzzle back from Kanekura. Honda wants to see the mummies. Miho wants to go too. Kanekura asks Yugi to let him display the Millennium Puzzle in the museum. Yugi isn't too sure, since he always wants to keep the puzzle around his neck. However, Yugi decides to let Kanekura take the puzzle, since it will only be for a day. Kanekura takes the Millennium Puzzle off Yugi's neck and thanks him, then turns around thinking, one day will be enough. Inside the museum, Miho screams in happiness at a necklace that shines in beauty. Anzu notices Miho is drooling. Meanwhile, Yoshimori is taking everyone else on a tour. Janochi asks if all the treasures belong to the people who dug them up. Yoshimori says no. In 1921 half of the treasures became personal possessions, but nowadays they all belong to Egyptian state. Grandpa adds that's why a famous person wasn't able to keep any of his treasure. Yugi thought archaeologists were just people who were after treasure. Yoshimori says there's not enough profit in that, he is more interested in the emotion of finding ancient artifacts than the money itself. Anzu sees some ancient carvings in one display. Yoshimori explains the carvings depict the judgment of the dead. The crimes that people made would be measured with a scale. If the weight of the crimes caused the scale to tilt to one side, monsters would consume those people. Yoshimori then says it's time to see the mummies while Janochi gets a little scared, but Honda is really excited. At the mummy exhibit, Miho screams and Honda says it's time. He opens up his arms and tells Miho to jump into his chest. However, Miho says the mummies are cute, they're like babies with their shaved heads. Honda looks down and sees Janochi grabbing his chest, he pushes Janochi off him and into the mummy case. Janochi glances at the mummy and screams, he tells everyone to move to the next exhibit before they get cursed. Yugi stares at the mummy exhibit for a little longer. The man with the white robe walks up beside him. Yugi looks up and sees tears fall from the man's eyes and asks why he's crying. The man says they are not his tears, he says the mummy looks like a rotten doll. Still, the soul of a great pharaoh lives within it, and the lamination of the soul becomes the tears within the man. Yugi notices the man is holding a scale. The man pets Yugi's head and calls him a cute boy. Yugi exclaims he's a high school student as the man walks away. Meanwhile, Kanekura and another man are looking at the Millennium Puzzle. The man thinks the Millennium Puzzle looks great and wants to buy it. Kanekura whispers to the man that they'll do business in his office. Janochi points out the display that contains Yugi's Millennium Puzzle. As the gang runs over to it, Kanekura and the man walk away. Anzu thinks they should take a photo of it. Yoshimori apologizes to Yugi since he didn't want to let the puzzle go, and explains that the exhibit wouldn't have been possible without Kanekura's help. Anzu tells everyone to gather around the Millennium Puzzle for the photo. Everyone then walks outside while Grandpa thanks Yoshimori for a great day, then he walks off. Yugi says he's waiting for the museum to close because he wants his puzzle back. Anzu says they should split up now. Everyone waves goodbye to each other. Yugi looks at his watch and notices it's 4:30, only 30 more minutes left until closing time. On one side of the scale, the man sets the feather of truth. Right now the scale is balanced. The man says he will now ask Kanekura a few questions. If he doesn't tell the truth, weight will be added to the opposite side of the scale. That will be the weight of his crime. If the opposite side of the scale touches the ground, there will be a punishment game. Kanekura gasps at the words punishment game. The man asks the first question. A girl falls into a well, and he is the only one that saw it happen. At his feet is a gold ring that the girl dropped. What will you do? Kanekura exclaims he will save the girl. The side of the scale that doesn't have the feather tilts downwards. Kanekura stares at the scale, saying he wasn't lying. They move on to the next question. Meanwhile, Yugi waits outside the museum. He looks at his watch and finds out it's 4:55 p.m. and decides to go back for his puzzle. Back with the test, Kanekura exclaims he hasn't been lying, yet the side without the feather continues to sink. He thinks it's some kind of trick. The man decides to tell Kanekura about the punishment game before he asks the last question. He says it lies in Kanekura's heart. The chair that Kanekura is sitting on transforms into a monster which grabs onto Kanekura. With the shadow game over, the man places the feather back on his head. He says Kanekura's mind was full of money and greed. That turns into demons, and Kanekura was consumed by those demons. The man picks up his scale and is ready to walk away. But suddenly, he sees the Millennium Puzzle lying on the desk. He picks it up and is amazed the Millennium Puzzle is complete. He wonders if a person in this country solved the puzzle. Yugi wanders the museum, looking for his puzzle. The man with the white robe approaches Yugi. Meanwhile, Kanekura holds his head in fear. Yugi notices the man is holding his Millennium Puzzle. The man asks if he was the one who solved it. Yugi says yes, but he wants to know why the man has it. The man tells himself the one who solves the puzzle possesses the power of darkness. He must make sure Yugi really holds this power. With the Millennium Key around his body, the man decides to peek inside Yugi's mind. The Millennium Key activates, and the man now finds himself inside Yugi's mind. There are two rooms. One room is scattered with toys and purity, but what does the other room contain? The man opens the door and sees Dark Yugi, the spirit of the Millennium Puzzle. The man wonders if it's Yugi, but he notices this new guy looks different. The man says to himself he's visited people's minds before. Normally, each person only has one room, however, Yugi has a second room. It feels like an ancient pharaoh's tomb. Dark Yugi doesn't know how the man got here, but he wants to know why the man came. The man says he's a guest and that he came here to learn more about the Millennium Puzzle's power. Dark Yugi is surprised the man knows about the Millennium Puzzle. The man explains the Millennium Puzzle is a dark item. For 3,000 years, it has rested in the king's grave. Its power was used to judge criminals. Dark Yugi asks if the man came here by using one of the Millennium items. The man says he holds the Millennium Key, an item that gives him access to people's minds. With this power, he can learn all about the person including personality and abilities. He also has the Millennium Scale, an item that measures the weight of sin for those who are being judged. However, the man doesn't know much about the Millennium Puzzle and if its power is transferred to the one who solves it. The man can tell the Millennium Puzzle has lots of power just by seeing Dark Yugi's room. He says his family will be taking this power if they need it. Dark Yugi tells him that the Millennium Puzzle's power is in his room. However, to show it he will play a game. If the man wins, he will tell him the secrets of the Millennium Puzzle. The rules are simple. Somewhere in his mind holds Dark Yugi's true room. If he finds it, he wins. The man states he has special abilities. With his power, he can freely manipulate the rooms of a person's mind and even destroy that person's personality. The man decides to accept the game and Dark Yugi wonders if it will really be that easy and that he's underestimating the danger of this game. The rest of Dark Yugi's mind appears. It's full of staircases and doors. It's almost like a maze. The man says it feels like there's a countless number of doors, but he knows one of them is Dark Yugi's true room. The man starts walking up a flight of stairs. He decides to open one of the doors. A huge boulder falls, and it almost hits the man. Dark Yugi appears and says it will be a long journey before the man can find his true room. The man realizes there are traps, and he decides to move on. One by one, the man opens the doors. In one of the rooms, a flood of water knocks the man down. In another room, a flamethrower sets the man's clothes on fire. However, the man soon realizes they are only illusions. He closes his eyes and decides to use all his nerves to find the right door. Determined to discover the Millennium Puzzle's true power, he finds his way to another door. When he opens it, he sees Dark Yugi sitting in a chair. The man asks if he made it in the right room, but as he walks forward the floor gives in. The man begins to fall, but he quickly grabs onto something. He realizes if he falls, he'll be trapped in this mind forever. Dark Yugi extends a hand out to the man and says it's not a trap. The man grabs onto his hand, and Dark Yugi pulls him up. The man can't believe he saved him. Dark Yugi says it's a bad idea to peek inside other people's minds. The man wonders if he lost the game or not. Dark Yugi says no, it's only the beginning. The man bids farewell to Dark Yugi and then leaves. Meanwhile, Yugi sees the man standing very still, not moving at all. The man realizes he entered Yugi's mind to test him, but in the end he was the one who was tested. Yugi asks the man if he's okay. The man says he's okay and returns the Millennium Puzzle to him. Yugi is glad to have his possession back and thanks him. The man says he's in debt with him. Yugi asks what debt. The man says to the other Yugi. Yugi has no idea what he is talking about. The man realizes Yugi has no awareness of his other personality. When Yugi and his other half become one, then the true power of the Millennium Puzzle will awaken. The man asks for his name and Yugi gives it to him. The man says he has many things to do in the country, but they will meet again soon. He introduces himself as Shadi. It's the first time Shadi has told his name to a stranger. Shadi walks away thinking that he has to confirm Yugi's true power. Yugi just stands there thinking he is really weird. In the anime, after Kanekura lost in Shadi's dark game, he just loses consciousness. In the manga, he dies of a heart attack, due to the shock of being eaten by Amit. In the anime, Shadi opened more doors on Yugi's mind room, with traps like a water stream or fire. In the manga he only opens one door. Yu-Gi-Oh! First Series, Episode 006. Published by Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki, Fandom. Shadi, the man from Egypt, attacks Yoshimori, and then infiltrates Anzu Mizaki's soul room to make her play Yugi Muto right into his hands to play a game of darkness. During the start of the game, Yugi transforms into Dark Yugi and takes Shadi's challenge. Each challenge became tougher than the next, putting Dark Yugi into a pinch. Along with Anzu on a board, suspended by Usheb dolls that crack with the time spent on each game, Yugi has to win or Anzu will fall from the roof of the school to her death. At night, Professor Yoshimori is sitting alone in his house reading about Kanekura's incident in the newspaper. Soon Sugoroku Muto will be visiting. He is looking forward to it. Shadi is standing in the room, but Yoshimori doesn't see him yet. Finally he sees Shadi's reflection and turns around. Shadi introduces himself as Anubis' disciple and says he's the other one who violated the Valley of the Kings. He lifts up the Millennium Scale and tells Yoshimori he will now be judged. Yoshimori tells Shadi to stay away. Meanwhile Grandpa is walking to the professor's house. Suddenly he hears a crash and sees Yoshimori falling out the window and into the bushes. Shadi says Yoshimori have to pay for his sins in the name of the gods and then he walks away. Yoshimori has been rushed to the hospital. Grandpa walks out the room and reports to Yugi and the gang that the problem isn't fatal. He then tells everyone to go home while he stays at the hospital the whole night. On the way home, Anzu Mizaki wonders what happened to both Kanekura and Yoshimori. They both were people of the Egypt excavation. Janochi thinks it's a curse. Miho gets scared but Honda assures her curses don't exist. Little does the group know that Shadi is watching them walk home. He tells himself once he's done with the judgments in this country he'll finish matters with Yugi. He recalls meeting Dark Yugi in his mind. Shadi losing to Dark Yugi's game has been bothering him all this time. He can't leave the country until all his problems are gone. At an intersection, Anzu says her house is in the other direction and she says goodbye to her friends and walks off. Shadi plans to use Anzu to draw forth the other Yugi, so he takes out his Millennium Key to open the mind of Anzu. He notices the room is surrounded by mirrors, almost like a dance training room. Shadi says the mirrors reflect oneself, they create confidence in herself. Anzu's mind is also filled with dreams. It also contains a picture of a man with no face. He has no idea what that means. Shadi senses goodwill in Anzu and pities her for being a part of his plan, however he still wants to draw out the other Yugi and so he goes forth with his dark plan. At school Honda points to an object on Janochi's forehead and neck. Janochi says the curse will come for them next and he needs those talismans for protection. Honda firmly states curses don't exist. Even if they did, as long as his heart is clean he has nothing to worry about. Yugi sees Anzu walk into the room and he greets her. Anzu just takes a seat and doesn't answer Yugi. She looks up, with completely blank eyes, and smiles at Yugi. During class the instructor says he will be measuring each student's strength, but first the field must be prepared and he asks Yugi to bring the white line maker. Yugi walks into the shed looking for the white line maker. He finally finds it, but as he takes it a bunch of poles come tumbling down and they almost hit Yugi. Anzu is also in the shed, hidden from Yugi's view. After class, Yugi, Janochi and Honda head to the rooftop. At the top of the stairs is Anzu. Suddenly a basketball comes rolling down the stairs and knocks Yugi off his feet. He falls down the stairs and Janochi and Honda run to him. They think Yugi should go to the school infirmary. Yugi walks into the infirmary but no one is there. Anzu has apparently been trailing Yugi because she is hidden in the infirmary. Meanwhile Janochi wonders how Yugi is doing. Suddenly they see Miho standing in front of the infirmary. Honda asks if she's sick or hurt. Miho says she saw Anzu walk in earlier and wonders if she's not feeling well. Plus, she has noticed Anzu acting strange lately. The three of them enter the infirmary and they are surprised to see Anzu on top of Yugi. Janochi runs to Yugi and knocks her off him. Anzu begins to speak but with Shadi's voice. Show me your true power so we can settle our fight. Then she runs away. Janochi wonders what happened to Anzu. The gang searches the whole school for Anzu but they can't seem to find her. Miho wonders what happened to Anzu's voice and Janochi thinks it's the Egyptian curse. Honda says if that's true then one of them could be next. He tells everyone to split up and search for Anzu again. After the others are gone Shadi suddenly approaches Honda from behind. While searching for Anzu Yugi suddenly sees her walking towards the roof. He runs and follows her. He opens the doors and sees Anzu on a plank with a rope tied to her body. One step and Anzu could fall off the roof into her death. Yugi runs towards Anzu but he is stopped by Shadi. Shadi says he's been trying to draw out the other Yugi, but he still hasn't appeared yet. Yugi has no idea what Shadi is talking about. Shadi says he will use another method to draw out the other Yugi. He tells him that Anzu is his puppet and he can command Anzu to do whatever he says. Meanwhile Janochi and Miho regroup. They see Honda approaching them and Janochi asks if he found Anzu, however Honda isn't to his normal self. He walks like a zombie towards them. Janochi asks what's wrong. Honda takes out a broom and begins swinging it at Janochi and Miho. They freak out and run away from him. Shadi tells Yugi to be hateful and sad. At the boundaries of his feelings the other Yugi is waiting. Finally the Millennium Puzzle activates and the other Yugi appears. He can't believe Shadi would use Anzu in his own game. Shadi says he wants to finish matters with him. He tells Yugi if he loses the game, he will lose Anzu. Before Shadi explains the rules he decides to tell Yugi something about the Millennium Puzzle. Yugi may have thought it was a coincidence he solved the puzzle, but in fact the puzzle chose him. The Millennium Puzzle has been waiting for 3,000 years as the other Millennium items have also chosen Shadi and his family. Yugi tells him that even if that's the reason why he doesn't see him as an ally he isn't interested in that stuff. He just wants Shadi to explain the rules of the game. Shadi tells Yugi not to be frightened. Somewhere in Yugi's heart he's afraid of his own power, the unknown power of the Millennium Puzzle. As proof Shadi points to the fence. The rope that is holding Anzu to the roof is tied to some miniature statues, which are wrapped around the fence. One of the statues breaks. Instantly the rope that is holding Anzu weakens. Shadi tells Yugi the game has already started. Those statues reflect Yugi's heart. When he shows weakness in his heart the statues will break one by one. If the remaining 3 statues break, Anzu will die. However Yugi does have an opportunity to win. Tied to the statues is the Millennium Key. What's holding that in place is a statue reflecting Shadi's heart. If Shadi's statue breaks first, the Millennium Key will be released and Anzu will be able to touch it. If she does she will regain her senses and Shadi will lose. Shadi says the one who shows weakness in their heart is the loser. Now that the rules have been explained, the game begins. The monster Amid emerges from the ground behind Yugi and grabs him. Shadi tells Yugi he must win in order to kill Amid. The first round is called Yami Concentration. A 3x3 squared game board pops out in front of Yugi. Behind each slate are pairs of the same picture. Yugi says there are 9 slates, so there's one without pair. Shadi says the middle slate will be the one left over. In this particular game Yugi will have to say what the middle slate contains. However Yugi will only be able to turn over each slate once. Shadi decides to give Yugi a hint. The slates are a mirror that reflect Amid's body. Yugi wonders what the slates could be, as he thinks another statue begins to crack. Meanwhile Honda continues to chase Janochi and Miho with the broom. Honda has Janochi cornered, but as soon as he takes one step forward Miho blasts him with a fire extinguisher. Janochi then runs up to Honda and punches him, however Honda recovers quickly. He grabs Janochi and throws him out the window. Janochi quickly grabs onto a nearby curtain and tells Honda this isn't a joke. Then Janochi sees Anzu standing on a plank. He is shocked to see her standing there. Yugi begins to analyze the situation. He recalls Shadi saying the slates are a mirror that reflects the monster. Since this is a concentration game, there are 4 pairs to the puzzle. Yugi thinks some more and finally comes up with a solution. He thinks the pairs are eyes, ears, nostrils and hands, since they all make up part of Amid's body. The only single thing the monster has is its mouth. Yugi gets it right. Amid disappears and the slates are flipped over, revealing the correct answer. Shadi congratulates Yugi for a splendid job, however, that was only the beginning. The next part of the game begins, as Shadi introduces Yugi to his new playmate, Janochi. Shadi says he's made from Yugi's memory. However, Shadi revived the Janochi from the time he bullied Yugi. Janochi takes Yugi's Millennium Puzzle and rips it from his neck. Part of the ground disappears, leaving Yugi and Janochi standing on a platform. Shadi explains the rules. Yugi and Janochi will both take turns rolling the Millennium Puzzle like a die. Where the puzzle points, the player must take 2 steps into that direction. The first player to make the opponent jump off the platform wins. Shadi wants to see Yugi destroy his memory from the past. Yugi knows the Janochi he's facing is only Shadi's illusion, but what if it really is the real Janochi who's just under Shadi's spell? Janochi begins to speak. He can't believe Yugi would treasure something like the Millennium Puzzle. Yugi is in shock from Janochi's words. Instantly 2 of the remaining statues break, leaving 1 left. Janochi tosses the Millennium Puzzle to the ground. The puzzle points into a certain direction and Yugi takes 2 steps into that direction. Now it's Yugi's turn. Yugi says he won't roll, he does not want to play with Janochi. Janochi assumes Yugi pass and tosses the Millennium Puzzle on the ground again. It points to the same direction as before and Yugi walks 2 more steps. Now Yugi is at the edge of the platform. It's now Yugi's turn, but he passes again. Shadi asks Yugi if he gives up. Yugi tells Shadi he is wrong and that he believes in his friend. Shadi says he can't crush his past and he lost because he's too weak. Shadi says strength comes from believing in oneself. Then Shadi orders Janochi to roll the puzzle again and end the game. However, Janochi doesn't respond to Shadi's command, instead he disappears. Shadi can't believe his illusion of the past is disappearing. Yugi picks up his Millennium Puzzle and says that their friendship remains strong even in a game like this. Suddenly the single rope holding Anzu up starts to tear. Yugi runs to Anzu. When he gets to the fence, he sees Janochi trying to hold the plank up. Shadi can't believe Yugi's friends are supporting each other while the statue linked to Shadi's heart begins to crack. Yugi asks Shadi if he knows where true strength comes from, and says it's from believing in one's friends. With that, the statue linked to Shadi breaks and the Millennium Key touches Anzu's hand. Anzu comes back to her senses. Wondering where she's at, noticing it's a long way down, Anzu screams. Janochi tells Anzu to hurry up because he can't support the plank much longer. Suddenly, Honda creeps up towards Janochi, he loses control and drops the plank. Anzu starts to fall but Yugi quickly grabs onto Anzu. The plank falls and the Millennium Key hits Honda's head. Honda comes back to his senses and tightly holds onto Janochi. Miho then comes running out onto the roof to make sure her friends are alright. Yugi and Anzu are safe on the roof but Janochi and Honda are still trapped. The Millennium Key falls and Shadi catches it. He admits he lost to Yugi but he knows his family and Yugi's fate have not disappeared. He says Yugi has a mission to draw out the true power of the Millennium Puzzle. Yugi and Shadi will meet again. In the anime, Yoshimori is pushed through a window by Shadi and hospitalized afterwards. In the manga, Shadi turns him into his puppet to attack Yugi's friends. In the anime, instead of Yoshimori being Shadi's puppet, that role is given to Honda. Shadi's game takes place in the museum, rather than the university. In the manga, Shadi's game also included a riddle, which Dark Yugi had to answer while corpses clung to him. Yu-Gi-Oh! First Series, Episode 007. Published by Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki, Fandom. The popularity of digital pets leads to a contest, and Honda trains Miho's pet, so they can take the paid trip. Meanwhile, Yugi is worried for his friend Hayayama, who seems to be pressured into some shady business by the bullying Kujirata. It is 7:55 a.m. and everyone is getting ready for school. Suddenly, a big student tells the people in front of him to not walk in front of him. One of the girls says it is Kujirata, someone who used to be quiet and shy. The other girl says his attitude has changed. He now has a lot of money, so things have gotten worse. Kujirata shoves the student into the school's trash. Noticing the student got dirty, he takes a few dollars out his pocket and tosses them to the ground, laughing at him. Little does Kujirata know that there is someone nearby taking pictures of him. At class, Hiroto Honda is sad that Miho didn't show up for school while he slumps down into his seat. The teacher walks through the aisles and reads a passage from a textbook. Suddenly, he hears a beeping noise. Katsuya Janochi frantically grabs a toy. On the toy screen is a small creature. Janochi says he has to clean it. He pushes a few buttons to fix the problem. The teacher stands in front of Janochi's desk and asks what he's doing. Janochi explains about the new digital pet product. He's taking care of his pet. One takes care of their pet by feeding it and cleaning it. How the pet turns out in the end all depends on how well the person cared for it. A new feature is that two digital pets can be linked together in date. Janochi says it's really popular. The teacher hits Janochi and tells him to not do it during class. After class, Anzu Mizaki asks Janochi why he didn't turn it off. Janochi says that his pet will not grow if it is off. He wants to hurry and make his pet grow fast. Anzu says it takes time. She and Yugi Mutu take out their digital pet toys and play with it. Yugi says there will be a good outcome if one takes care of it properly. It's almost like raising a child. Janochi agrees. However, Honda has a different opinion. He thinks the digital pets are a complete waste of time. Anzu scolds Honda for saying that. Yugi insists the digital pets are fun, but Honda still disagrees. Janochi thinks Honda is mad because he couldn't get one. After all, they are sold out everywhere. Honda firmly says he doesn't want to clean up after digital pets. Instead, he wants to remain in reality and clean up actual trash. Suddenly, Miho walks through the door and greets everyone. Honda's face turns red as he greets Miho. Anzu tells her second period is already over. Miho takes out her digital pet and says it's hard to take care of her, while Honda goes crazy over it. Yugi is excited that Miho also has a digital pet. She says she wants to go to Australia. Miho holds up a poster and says there's a pet competition this Sunday. The winner gets to go to Australia. Anzu thinks that's the reason why Janochi is so desperate. However, Miho is tired. She wonders if there's anyone who could help take care of her pet and win the Australian trip for a pair. Honda instantly grabs Miho's hands and pledges he will make her win. Miho is really happy now and Janochi asks Honda about what he said earlier. Honda says there's no difference between reality and the digital world. Miho wishes Honda the best of luck. Yugi runs over to Heiyama, another student, and asks if he's going to play with digital pets. Heiyama says he doesn't have one. Suddenly, Kujirata appears and tells Heiyama to come over. Heiyama, with a sad expression on his face, follows him into the bathroom. Yugi's heard bad things about Kujirata. He walks to the bathroom and slightly opens the door and sees Kujirata and Heiyama exchanging money with each other. Yugi is shocked to see this. He wonders if Heiyama is involved in a kickback. The bathroom door opens and Kujirata walks out, followed by Heiyama. Yugi calls out for Heiyama. He tries to ask Heiyama about what he saw. Heiyama tells Yugi to not tell anyone and he nods his head. Yugi then tells Heiyama to come and talk to him anytime, as they are classmates after all. Heiyama thanks Yugi for his support. Then Yugi runs over to Heiyama and gives him something and tells him they should enter the contest together. Heiyama looks in his hand. It's a digital pet. Homeroom soon begins. The teacher notices Honda missing and asks where he's at. One of the students gives the teacher a note from Honda. It says he's taking the day off to raise a child. The teacher gets angry. Janochi and Anzu can't believe it. Honda is at his house working with Miho's digital pet. He plans to not take his eyes off the pet for a second until he wins Miho the prize. Honda thinks about the trip to Australia with Miho and accidentally drops the digital pet while imagining. He immediately picks it up, then he imagines Miho at the beach with her swimsuit on. Honda goes crazy over himself. Suddenly, the digital pet beeps and Honda gets back to work. Later, Honda's mother scolds him for being up in the middle of the night. Honda tells her to leave him alone. His entire youth is at stake. The next day after school, Yugi and the gang begin their way home. Janochi wonders what Honda is thinking. He hasn't been at school ever since. Miho is looking forward to the contest. Suddenly, they see a group of kids crowding around a store where there is a gold digital pet on display. Anzu asks what it is. Yugi says it's a limited edition digital pet. Only 100 copies were sold. An amazing pet can be raised with it. Janochi asks if there's no way you can lose the contest with it. Miho wants it. Yugi says it's 50,000 yen, the equivalent to $546 United States dollars. Janochi is shocked at the price. Suddenly, Kujirata appears and pushes the kids out of his way. He wants the gold pet for himself. He smashes the store window and takes the item. The store owner walks out with an angry face. Kujirata throws a bunch of money into the air and the store owner catches it all. Yugi thinks that's the money he took from Heiyama. Kujirata laughs and walks away. Janochi mentions Kujirata used to not even have lunch money. Anzu says Kujirata used to be a good kid, then he went wild. Miho wonders what happened. Meanwhile, Heiyama is at his house uploading pictures of Kujirata from his camera into his computer. He prints out a colored photo of Kujirata and smiles. The next day of school, Anzu states Honda has been absent for 3 days. Miho thinks he's been watching over the digital pet this entire time. She's confident she will win the contest. The two girls then walk over to Yugi, who is feeding his pet some food. Yugi says he calls his pet Yu2. Anzu holds out her digital pet, Samomo-chan. Janochi then takes out his pet. He thinks the contest is going to his pet, Joe. Then he asks Yugi if they can do a data exchange. It will make both their pets grow. Yugi likes that idea. Yu2 is timid, so having Joe's wild characteristic would be nice. Yugi and Janochi link their digital pets together. Both pets appear on the screen. They see Joe beating up Yu2. But once that's done, the data exchange is complete. Yugi hopes there's more growth to their pets. Janochi is excited for the Australia trip. Suddenly, Kujirata appears. He thinks he's going to be the contest winner and he holds up his gold pet. Janochi doesn't think Kujirata will win just because he has a gold pet. There's no way someone like Kujirata could even raise one. Kujirata introduces his ultimate pet, Devil Master. Anzu doesn't think it has a good personality. Janochi is creeped out by the look of the pet. Kujirata swipes Anzu's digital pet from her hands and links the two pets together. Devil Master destroys Anzu's pet. Kujirata says Devil Master grows by eating other pets. Janochi gets angry. Kujirata asks if his pet should eat Janochi's too. They both link their pets together. Janochi's pet, Joe, first begins beating up Devil Master, but in the end Devil Master eats Joe. Janochi screams over the loss of Joe. Kujirata thinks the Australia trip will be his. Yugi thinks Kujirata has some mean ways. Miho says how can Kujirata use the pets that others raised to go to Australia? Anzu thinks Miho is one to talk since Honda is doing the exact same thing. Yugi tells Kujirata that it's wrong to eat the pets of other people. Kujirata says to shut up. In this world, the strongest ones win. Kujirata is about to send Devil Master to eat Yugi's pet too when a familiar voices sound. Honda appears. His eyes are really baggy, and he claims to have raised the ultimate pet, Digital Super Ichigo. Everyone laughs at Honda's pet. Honda and Kujirata link their pets together. Devil Master is about to eat Ichigo, but suddenly something happens. Ichigo uses its broom to sweep away Devil Master. Devil Master disappears and Honda wins. Honda says his pet doesn't allow trash to exist. When Ichigo finds trash, it destroys it. Kujirata gets mad over his loss. He throws his gold pet to the ground and stomps away. Yugi and the others compliment Honda for his victory. Suddenly, they hear a noise. They turn around and see Heiyama sitting in his desk. Honda asks what's wrong. Heiyama says it's nothing. After school, Kujirata is at the back of the school throwing a fit. He kicks the school's wall in rage. He can't believe Honda beat him at the game. Suddenly, Kujirata hears a beep. He turns around and sees Heiyama with a camera. Meanwhile, Miho and Honda are walking home. Miho is looking forward to the contest. She has even bought a swimsuit for the trip. Honda's face turns completely red at the thought of Miho in her swimsuit. Miho says she also bought some night clothes. Honda walks along the sidewalk with new thoughts in his head. Suddenly, he hears Miho scream. Honda turns around and sees Miho's bag on the floor, along with a note. It's a note from Kujirata, saying to meet him at the warehouse. Honda holds his fist up, angry at Kujirata. Yugi is also on his way home. He's thinking about Heiyama, hoping nothing bad has happened to him. Suddenly, he sees someone walking through the bushes. Yugi decides to follow the mysterious person. Honda opens the warehouse doors and demands to know where Miho is at. Finally, he sees Miho tied up to the warehouse. Kujirata walks out from the darkness and falls to the ground. He is shown to have scratch marks all over his back. It looks like someone beat him up. A whip is cracked, and Heiyama walks out from the shadows. Honda wonders why he's here, and Heiyama says his pet is pretty pathetic. He was just punishing him. Honda has no idea what Heiyama is talking about. Heiyama says his pet had an inferiority complex, so he used money to help make him grow. Honda knows Heiyama is referring to Kujirata. Heiyama says Kujirata lost at Digital Pets, so now he's useless. He wants a strong pet now. Honda thinks Heiyama is horrible for treating people like pets. Heiyama doesn't see anything wrong with that. He thinks it's pretty interesting. Heiyama takes out a book filled with pictures of Kujirata and his life. Honda can't believe Kujirata's change of attitude is Heiyama's fault. Heiyama thanks Honda for taking care of his pet. He cracks his whip again. Suddenly Yugi appears and tells Heiyama to stop. Honda asks him what he's doing here. Yugi says he was worried about Heiyama, so he followed Kujirata here. Yugi exclaims to Heiyama that it's wrong. Heiyama mentions Yugi saw him during feeding time. Then Heiyama remembers Yugi giving him a digital pet. He takes it out and throws it to the ground. Yugi runs towards Heiyama. Heiyama takes his whip and whips him with it. Yugi falls into a bunch of boxes. Heiyama thinks Yugi is completely useless. Honda charges towards him. Heiyama aims his whip at Honda but misses. On the third time Honda gets hit and falls. The effects of staying up all night suddenly hit Honda, and he becomes very tired. Heiyama says he wants Honda to be his pet, which was why he was calling out for him. Heiyama makes more fun of Honda and he eventually whips off a piece of Miho's clothing. Honda gets up and says he'll never forgive Heiyama. Heiyama tells Honda he shouldn't look at his master like that. He whips Honda and he falls once again. Heiyama thinks it will be interesting to raise a resistant pet. Suddenly, a glowing light appears. Heiyama turns around and sees Dark Yugi. He says it's game time and asks Heiyama to have their pets fight each other. Yugi picks up the digital pet that Heiyama threw to the ground and links the two pets together. The two pets appear in real life. Heiyama orders his pet to eat that loser. The two pets exchange attacks at each other, but Heiyama's pet ends up hitting Yugi's pet first. However, Yugi has complete faith in Yu2 and knows it can win. The two pets battle it out again. Suddenly, the digital pet toys begin to beep. Yugi is relieved. The data exchange effect is now occurring. The beeping means Yugi's pet is about to evolve. And so Yugi's pet does evolve. Yu-2 is a lot stronger now. It punches Heiyama's pet, and it falls to the ground. Heiyama orders for his pet to get up. He whips his pet, but nothing happens. Yugi says the match is over. Heiyama can't believe it. He continues to whip his pet. His pet eventually stands up and attempts to seemingly attack Heiyama. The door of darkness has opened. In reality, Heiyama is on the ground in complete shock. Yugi says there's more to pets than food and whips. Love is needed, and Heiyama never understood that. Miho is shown to have been freed from the ropes. She and Honda are lying together on the ground. She says, "Let's go to Australia together, Mama." Heiyama does not appear in the manga. In the manga, Honda does not own a digital pet, because he has a dog, which already needs a lot of care. In the manga, Kujirata's pet is a hidden character, a very rare pet whose chance of getting it is 1 in 10,000, rather than coming already in a limited edition. In the manga, Kujirata's pet loses against Yugi's pet in the same way Heiyama's does, making Kujirata feel sad, but relieved that he can sleep now, instead of giving obsessive care to his pet. In the manga, no shadow game or penalty game takes place.